All right, let's jump right in. We have these powerful ways of talking about illness, and a lot of the time, we don't even think about them. We frame being sick as a kind of war that we have to fight. But is that really the best way to understand what's actually happening inside our own bodies?
I mean, here's a perfect example. You see headlines like this all the time, right? We talk about fighting a disease. We have a clinical armamentarium of drugs. We follow doctors' orders. This whole military lingo is it's baked into how we talk about medicine. And when someone dies, we say they lost the battle, which, can feel a little strange, almost like it's diminishing their struggle.
And this kind of language, this warlike talk, can have some pretty serious consequences for patients. It can be really alienating. Instead of feeling empowered, it can make them feel like they're just the battlefield, a passive location where this war is taking place. I mean, can you imagine being told that to save you, they first have to kill you? That's a terrifying thing to hear.
So let's stick with this metaphor for a minute and push it to its logical limit. If our body is a country and it's under attack, then our immune system is its army. But what happens when that army gets confused? What happens when it can't tell the difference between an invading force and its own people? That is the question we're going to get into today.
So to really get this, we have to meet the soldiers on the front lines, and that is the innate immune system. This is our body's first line of defense, our most ancient one. It's the rapid response team, the cops on the beat, always on patrol, just looking for trouble.
Now, this system isn't just a sledgehammer. It's actually pretty sophisticated. It uses two totally different strategies to figure out if there's an invasion happening. Think of it like having two different types of intelligence gathering to spot an enemy.
And this slide lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got pattern-triggered immunity, or PTI. The best way to think about this is your border guards checking IDs, recognizing an enemy's uniform. It's direct. On the other side, you have effector-triggered immunity, ETI. This is way more subtle. This is more like your internal spy agency detecting sabotage, noticing that something's wrong on the inside, even if the enemy is trying to be sneaky.
So let's zoom in on PTI. This system uses these special sensors called pattern recognition receptors, or PRRs, and they're basically programmed to look for very specific molecular patterns that just shouldn't be in our bodies. These things are called PAMPs. A great example is a specific molecule found on the outside of bacteria. Our PRRs see that pattern, they know instantly that it's foreign, and boom, the alarm bells go off.
ETI, on the other hand, is playing a whole different game. It's not looking for the enemy itself, it's looking for the mess the enemy makes. See, pathogens release these molecules called effectors to try and sabotage our cells from the inside. Well, ETI acts like a security system, guarding all of our vital cellular machinery. If one of those processes gets messed with, the ETI alarm goes off. It detects the invader by its hostile actions.
Okay, so an alarm has been triggered. One way or another, we know there's an intruder. So, how does the message get out? How are the orders to attack sent across the entire battlefield of the body? Well, it all happens through a network of some incredibly powerful little molecules.
And here they are, the inflammatory cytokines. You can think of these as the chemical messengers of your immune army. When a threat is spotted, immune cells just flood the area with these cytokines to call in reinforcements, to coordinate a big attack, and to create inflammation. The heat, the swelling, all those signs that a battle is raging. But this is where things get really tricky. Cytokines are a double-edged sword. On one hand, they are absolutely essential. They protect us, they fight off germs, they keep us healthy. But if you get too many of them, they become incredibly dangerous. They can cause chronic inflammation, tissue destruction, and in really extreme cases, they can cause shock and even death. It is a razor-thin balance. And that right there brings us to the absolute core of our story today, the idea of immune system friendly fire. This is what happens when that powerful, dangerous, double-edged sword of our immune response gets turned around and pointed at the very body it's supposed to be protecting.
The key to understanding this whole mess are these molecules called DAMPs. Now, unlike the PAMPs we saw before, the enemy's signals, DAMPs come from us. When our own cells get stressed out or damaged or die in a messy way, they release these DAMPs. It's basically an internal SOS signal.
And here is the fundamental critical problem. Those exact same pattern recognition receptors that are so good at spotting enemy signals
can also be triggered by our own SOS signals. At a molecular level, the system gets confused. It sees a signal of damage, and it mistakes it for a signal of an invasion.
And that's the whole ballgame. When our immune system gets activated by our own distress signals, it launches the exact same full-blown inflammatory attack that it would against a deadly bacteria. It unleashes those powerful cytokines, but this time, the target is our own healthy tissue. That is friendly fire.
And the fallout from this sustained chronic friendly fire is, well, it's enormous. This isn't some rare, bizarre thing. This process is now linked to a huge range of diseases, everything from heart disease and rheumatoid arthritis to the inflammation that comes with obesity and maybe even some forms of depression.
So this all raises a really big question, right? Why on earth would our bodies have such a dangerous design flaw? Why would evolution ever allow a system that can so easily turn against itself? It feels like a terrible mistake, but it might actually be a necessary trade-off. To get this, you have to think about a basic dilemma that any detection system faces: the balance between sensitivity and specificity. You can have a system that's super sensitive, that catches any possible threat early, but you risk a lot of false alarms, like mistaking our own SOS signals for an enemy. Or you can have a system that's super specific, that never makes that mistake, but you run the risk of missing a real threat that's trying to be stealthy. The evolutionary idea that really helps explain this is called antagonistic pleiotropy. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but the concept is actually pretty simple. It just means that a single trait can be a double-edged sword. It can give you a massive advantage when you're young and trying to survive and reproduce, but that exact same trait might come back and cause problems for you later in life.
And this is how it all comes together. For almost all of human history, the #1 threat was dying from an infection before you ever had a chance to have kids. So having a hypersensitive, trigger-happy immune system was a huge survival advantage. It kept you alive long enough to pass on your genes. The downside, all that chronic inflammation, all those friendly fire diseases, they tend to show up much later in life, after you've already reproduced. And from a cold evolutionary perspective, it prioritizes the short-term win of survival over long-term perfect health.
So we end up right back where we started. If so many of our modern illnesses aren't caused by a foreign invader, but by our own defense system doing exactly what it evolved to do, but just in a modern world where its side effects are more obvious, then what does that mean for our war on disease? If the enemy is actually a fundamental part of our own survival strategy, well, maybe we need a completely new story to tell about what it means to be sick.